Bob the Wizard by Riley Gretzer. This is a tale of old of a time when kings ruled ever-changing kingdoms. Dragons flew and knights battled, but this is a tale of something much more powerful. A wizard. In one of these many kingdoms a wizard ruled, but he was evil, cruel, and in his kingdom lay dark creatures lurked, evil trolls and goblins and other foul beasts of darkness. But back to the king of this foul land. His name was Sintelicos the Dark, the most evil person in all the kingdoms of this earth. However, our tale focuses on a different wizard, Bob the Kind. Bob lived in Rilian. However, Rilian was a very new kingdom. There wasn't a castle, just the beginnings of one, or defenses, or much wealth. But the king of Rilian, James, was friends with Mim, king of the dwarves. Now the scene is set, we enter the world of Bob the Wizard. "Hi, Bob," said Joe the blacksmith, as Bob walked by his shop. "May I interest you in anything?" "No," Bob replied. He continued on his walk. He left the castle, if that's what it can be called, and continued home. But as he was walking through the town, he saw a strange wooden pole lying on the ground. Upon picking it up, he felt a surge of power. Mystical energy flowing through him. Yes, that pole was magical. A wizard's staff. A wizard's staff is like a wand, but longer and more detailed, usually carved with mystic runes or other symbols. This is the precise moment when Bob went from Bob the farmer to Bob the wizard. "I feel so powerful," Bob exclaimed. He tried to cast a spell, but he did not know how. Around the same time, Sintelicos was building an army to attack Rilian. Thinking it weak and easy to take, his force was small. "Move it, you miserable, useless soldiers," he shouted. "We're going to Rilian to conquer our enemies." "But what if they have an army too?" asked one of the goblins in the group. "They won't." "Now move out," Sintelicos ordered. However, Sintelicos was wrong. The king of Rilian did have an army, not a very large one, but powerful. Bob walked into a small little house to try and figure out his new magical staff when he heard a loud crash. He leapt outside to see a battle beginning. The army of Rilian, led by King James, was battling the army of Sintelicos. However, Sintelicos was nowhere to be seen. An orc raider ran by, and Bob smacked him with his staff. A fight was beginning. Luckily, King James's army were winning the day. Victory was won by the armies of Rilian. The king called a meeting in the still unfinished castle. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We are victorious in this battle, but we could have done better." Shouts of agreement came from the crowd. "We will double the watch on the new guard tower." Some mumbling came from the soldiers. "Should we go on the offensive and siege Sintelicos' fortress?" King James explained. "Begin construction on a siege tower, rams, ladders, and a catapult. We move out in 3 days' time. Goodbye." Everyone spread out and went home or to see the jester's show. The soldiers moved out to start making the requested items. 2 archers got in an old cart. Some guards cut down a tree to make the ram. Other soldiers built a siege tower to climb the walls, ladders for the same purpose, and a catapult to destroy them. In 3 days, just like the king said, they did move out towards the Dwarven Kingdom to get some reinforcements. King James, riding on his horse with the generals his horse beside him, led the march. "Stop here," said King James. "We will camp for the night." "Yes, sir," replied the army. They started pitching tents and lighting fires for the night. Inside the king's tent, he made plans with General Tim. "Tim," said the king. "Yes, my lord," replied Tim. "What are we going to do?" "Stop Sintelicos." "How, Tim?" "With all of our equipment." "That would work, but Sintelicos is a wizard. He would not be defeated so easily. I suppose if only a wizard would just walk into the room." At that exact moment, Bob the Wizard did walk into the room, having just figured out how to cast a spell. "Excuse me, I do believe I can help," said Bob. "How?" questioned General Tim. "Yes, how indeed?" asked King James. "Why are you even here? You're not a soldier." "I am a wizard, though." "I just figured out how to light a fire with my staff," Bob exclaimed. King James smiled. They had hope. A hope of victory. The next day, when they reached the Dwarven Kingdom, they asked Min to give the king to give them some assistance. His kingdom stood in a hill, tunnels or streets, caves, everything else. And because his kingdom was a giant mine, he was incredibly wealthy. "So I now help you, but only because we are close friends, James," Min shouted from his throne. "Thank you," replied King James. While they were discussing, Bob walked into the Dwarven blacksmith shop, where he met Mr. Smith, the blacksmith. Hi there, Mr. Bob said to the dwarf. What? He replied. Just wondering who you are. My name is Smith. Well then, Mr. Smith, will you be coming on the march to Centelico's kingdom? Yes. You want to travel together? Fine, replied Mr. Smith. At that moment, Mr. Smith, the dwarf, and Bob the wizard started becoming friends. As the armies of dwarves and men came close to Centelico's kingdom, they saw a massive wall with only one gate. The only way in and out of Centelico's kingdom of evil. King Jay's ordered the ram started battering the gate while the archers in the cart distracted the guards on the wall. With a loud crash, the ram breached the gates and soldiers poured in. The only problem was the gate wasn't large enough to let the tower through. So some of the soldiers grabbed a grappling hook that was going to be used to climb the wall to pull the area around the gate down. When they did, the tower rolled right over into Centelico's dark kingdom. Soon they could see Centelico's fortress in the distance. It was tall, green, and crawling with guards. The armies of Mim, king of dwarves, and King James camped there for the night, just outside of Centelico's vision. The army of men and dwarves marched on towards Centelico's king with great speed. When they finally reached his fortress, they opened fire on it. A ballista, or giant crossbow, fired the grappling hook at the walls. The latter was put into position, and the tower, no longer pulled by a horse but pushed by men, was looming up towards the wall. The ram was unfortunately broken in the bow for the wall, so the ram carriers were climbing onto the siege tower, smashed into the wall with a loud crash. Meanwhile, Bob and Mr. Smith, the dwarf, were battling Centelicos. Mr. Smith bravely fended off the guards, while Bob and Centelicos battled up the stairs towards the one dungeon cell at the very top of the tower. Bob used his magic to fling Centelicos out the window. Bob, being a new wizard, was also flung onto the small balcony outside. Centelicos tackled Bob and they started falling. "Hoorah!" screamed Centelicos. "You cannot defeat me!" "But I can make a fire!" Bob replied. At that he lit a fire that blasted him away from Centelicos, but Centelicos' fall was broken by some of the soldiers trying to catch him. Centelicos was jumped on and knocked out by over half of James' soldiers and taken to the prison carriage they had brought. The archers in the cart, as well as the prison guard, escorted the prison carriage all the way back to Rillian. While Bob was looking through Centelicos' fortress for Mr. Smith, and found him, but also found a book of spells. He took it and headed home to Rillian, where a great feast was held in his honor. At this feast, the whole kingdom thanked Bob. There was music playing, the jester performing, and a bonfire burned. Mr. Smith and a few other dwarves even came to join in the festivities, and there was peace for a while in that ever-changing world that they lived in. Dun, 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 dun.